Welcome everybody to another episode of Thriving with Rachel and Dr. Lou. Today's topic is when we are stuck. I think we've all experienced a situation, maybe more than one, where we felt stuck in life, whether we're stuck in a relationship, stuck at a job, stuck in something that we feel that we can't get out of, don't know how to get out of. Maybe sometimes we feel like we know what to do, but just don't feel like doing it. And to me, my first thought is, let's think about what's the easiest one to do, right?
Which might not always feel the best, though, too. I guess, like path of least resistance. Is that what you mean?
Well, part of it was because I think sometimes when we're stuck, we don't feel motivated to do it. If something's like a really steep mountain, we may not want to climb it.
Mm-hmm.
But if there's a small hill, I'm more likely to do it, right? But if I can do that one hill, then I kind of start to feel a little bit more confident, a little bit more comfortable. I kind of get my, muscles moving or my body moving. And
like law of inertia? Get the ball rolling?
Yeah,
keep on.
Exactly. So I think, as a strategy, one of the things that we can do when we're feeling stuck is try to identify, well, what are the small things that we can do towards that goal, towards where we're trying to get to. And if we can start moving a little bit, that allows us to keep moving. But what about when we're stuck in situations when we don't know what to do or don't believe that we can do anything about it?
I think that's the biggest barrier, is the feeling or belief that I can't. So we might know what we want, but we don't venture to ask ourselves what we want because we already think the answer is I can't have it. And so I'll do that a lot too. I'll kind of go into, some stuck points, and I'll kind of wish, I wish I didn't do that, or I wish this wasn't my situation, or I should have said no, because I have an issue with overcommitting and saying yes to everyone and everything. And so having to kind of back out of that, or, change my decision, things like that are really hard. And so I think I go into things oftentimes where if I feel stuck, I'm one of those people who's just like, forget it. And I just want to kind of cancel the day and just...
So that's black and white.
Yeah, because it feels easier.
Yeah.
It feels easier to just make some cop-out excuse for me
Mm-hmm.
of, I don't really, my car broke down, or my kid's sick, or, I have an obligation that came up, whatever it might be that might just cover all of the issues of the day. So I can just kind of conveniently get out of all of them and kind of a reset. But we can't always do that in life. And I think, I don't know, for me personally, I find myself doing that maybe a little bit too often.
Although, think about that. Our natural instinct is to shut it down. And I think that's sometimes important to listen to our body, that we're telling ourselves this is too much, right? Now, sometimes it is too much. Sometimes it's not too much, but we feel like it is, right? We just don't feel like doing it. But my point is, it's sometimes important to listen to our bodies and listen to what we're telling ourselves just long enough to pause and think it through. Oftentimes, I think we just respond to our feeling of being stuck, feeling overwhelmed, feeling like we can't, and then we just shut it down.
Well, because I think we put meaning to that. So, I don't know if that's the same for you, but for me, when I feel stuck, it's something that I feel like my automatic thought that's associated with it is you can't do anything about this. And it means that the rest of my day is ruined, or, I can't possibly do X, Y, and Z things. And so that's, I think, why I go straight to shutting it down. So if we can kind of recognize that feelings and thoughts, they have a function, but they're not always indicative of what's right or wrong or what you can and cannot manage. I think a lot of times if we could interpret it not so much against our ability to be able to do things, but instead shifted it to what is this trying to tell me? What is the message that I can gain from this? What's the function? Like anxiety, for instance. When I'm anxious, same thing. It's uncomfortable. I'd rather shut it down. I'd rather, escape the thing that I'm, not wanting to do. Like if it's something I have to go do, the minute that I decide I'm not doing it, anxiety is gone. Right?
Natural reinforcer.
Absolutely, that I should totally do that every time, right? But if I can recognize that maybe anxiety's function is a protective factor of, hey, this is something new. Maybe you should prepare a little bit more, or maybe you should, have a plan of action, not a plan of escape. I think that would be a better interpretation.
Need some more help.
Yeah.
Somebody else to support you.
But if you are more observant, as opposed to placing meaning and association to it immediately, as if it's something I need to get rid of, I don't know, I think it lends to a different action plan.
I agree. It's interesting though, as we're talking about this, a couple different things are going off in my head. One is the idea that we need to take a step back and kind of evaluate what we're doing.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time that I'm thinking about that, I'm thinking, well, if I'm listening to this conversation, I'm thinking, are they telling me I have to think about every decision? Like, that's exhausting in and of itself.
Mm-hmm.
And then it also feeds this sense of doubt
Mm-hmm.
in my abilities, right? Which we aren't trying to convey.
Right.
So there needs to be a balance. Like, there needs to be a balance in life all the time. But there needs to be a balance in when we feel stuck and know that, okay, this is enough, I don't want to do that. Mm-hmm. Or this is enough, I don't know if I can do it. Maybe if I had some extra help, maybe if I planned it a different way, maybe if I just took a couple bites out of it,
Right.
you know, didn't try to take on the whole project right now.
So like the mountain idea that you were talking about.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I think when we're stuck, what's important is, one, to be aware, mm-hmm. right? I think that's a general rule of thumb, that in any of our situations when we are feeling stuck, anxious, overwhelmed, frustrated, whatever the emotion is, awareness is kind of the first step. We need to tune in, notice it, because without awareness we really can't make a change, right? We're not actively, intentionally changing it.
Well, we don't know where we're starting, right? So if we're not observing and identifying where the starting point is or what's actually going on in this moment, then to your point, how do I know where to start, where to change, or what to change? So yeah, I think observation and awareness is the first step. So how would you, what would that look like?
Well, it's a great question, because a lot of times people are wondering, well, how do I increase awareness?
Because I think, sorry to interrupt, I feel like sometimes we feel too aware. And so I want to make sure.
We want to shut that down.
Yeah. So I think when I talk about, increased awareness, I get a lot of pushback from myself included, because I'm like, I don't want to have to think about all these things or be noticing all these things. I distract myself for that, right? So I don't know if you could talk a little bit more on what that looks like.
Yeah. So to me, awareness is the intentional mindfulness of what my experience is right now and my response to it. And I'm not saying that we have to be on high alert 24/7, okay? What I am saying is, when you start to feel stuck, when you start to feel that resistance, mm-hmm. when you start to feel that tension or conflict within ourselves, we need to notice it. Now, sometimes we notice it after the fact, mm-hmm. and sometimes we notice it while we're in it. Sometimes we are, a couple days past and somebody's pointing it out to us, right? The goal to me is to shorten that time of when it happens to awareness. Mm-hmm. And if we can start to shorten that time, the more that we can tune in and become aware, then the sooner we can make a change or an intentional decision as to how to handle something.
Right.
So I think awareness is one first thing.
Can I expand on that first?
Oh, absolutely.
Go on the next step. So one thing, because I want to kind of make it more concrete. So when we're talking about awareness, what to be aware of, I think a lot of times we're very aware of how we feel, and that's the thing that we want to change. However, that's not something that we have direct control over. We can't just snap our fingers and change how we feel. So when we're talking about awareness, feelings is just one component of what you want to be aware of, but the other components of our experience include what we're thinking about or what we're paying attention to, and also what we're doing in this moment. And if we can expand our observation and notice all three of those things, then we're actually emphasizing not only the things that aren't in our direct control, but also things that are in our direct control. If we are only paying attention to the feeling, then you're paying attention to the one thing that you can't change directly, right?
Right away, anyway.
We can influence it.
We can influence
right?
it.
Yeah, so if I can recognize, let's say I feel really exhausted and maybe down when I wake up in the morning, and I'm focusing on how long my day is going to be because I'm so tired, and how I'm not going to know if I can make it through, and maybe...
You're talking about today, aren't you?
God, I can't even tell you. Can you tell?
Yeah, you're tired, aren't you?
But yes, quite honestly, today I'm drained. And I stayed in bed a little bit longer. Mm-hmm. Each time I stayed in bed a little bit longer, it reinforced the thought of, oh, I can't get out of bed, and I'm so tired, and it reinforced the heaviness I was feeling, and it definitely didn't motivate me to change.
Yeah.
And
it's funny, I had the same experience this morning.
Did you?
So I'm like in bed, and it's like around 7-ish, and I'm thinking, I wonder if it's raining. If it's raining, I don't have to take the dog for a walk. I can sleep in a little bit, and like all this is playing out in my head, and I'm like, I don't know if I want to get up. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Which I think is, we fantasize about, right? We visualize, and that feels better, and then it's our excuse out of it. But notice how it weighs more on what the next step is, right? Mm-hmm. And so I guess this morning, in addition to my child making me get up, I evaluated. I kind of checked in with myself of, what's going on. Kind of validated the fact that, you have a right to be tired. It was a long night. You didn't get a lot of sleep, and it makes sense that you're tired. Have you ever managed a day before when you were tired?
All the time.
All the time. Absolutely, yeah. And I have, quote unquote, made it through. And so this questioning that I'm focusing on and visualizing of my day not going well, I had to kind of look at that and say, where is that the whole truth? And redirect. Because if I had just stayed on the fact that I'm tired and the visual that was attached to it of I'm not going to make it through the day, I don't think I would have gotten out of bed.
Well, tune into that question that we're asking ourselves too, because oftentimes we ask ourselves this black and white yes or no answer or question that has to do with, can I make it through the day?
Like ability.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And in the reality of things, we can make it through. It's a question of how. It may not be the way I want. It may not be as alert or as tuned in as I want to be, but we do the best we can every day, right? Yeah. So I think a couple things. We mentioned so far awareness, right?
And what to be aware of. So
and the three
thoughts, feelings, and behaviors. So what am I feeling, what am I thinking or paying attention to, and what am I doing?
And then also kind of tuning in to what we're questioning. Mm-hmm. Like if we're feeling stuck, frustrated, or overwhelmed, or whatever, what are we actually saying to ourselves? Are we questioning whether we can do something or not? Because if we are, which often we are, right? I would encourage everybody to start to tune in, be mindful of that, and maybe change that question. Maybe change the question to, how can I do what I want? Right. How can I get through this day? How can I tackle all of the things that I need to do today? Right. Do I need to prioritize some things? Do I need to bring somebody else in to help me out on something? Do I need to put something off till tomorrow? So I think it's important for us when we are becoming aware and mindful of our experience, our thoughts, our feelings, and our behaviors, we're also tuning into the self-talk that's going on.
So those automatic thoughts.
Those automatic thoughts, which we don't have control over, right? Automatic thoughts are just that. They're there. And a lot of times people ask, why do I have those? Why can't I have these other automatic thoughts that I really want, right? Automatic thoughts, that's part of what our brain does. Right. It produces thoughts. And unfortunately, the more we have these thoughts, the more those thoughts are going to be present and in our mind. And so one of the things that we can do with that is start to put in place or put in our mind the thoughts that we want to have. Right. So if we're feeling stuck, one of the things that we may want to start practicing is just asking ourselves that question, how can I? Creating that shift, right?
I think it redirects the focus. So we talk about, having automatic thoughts and intentional thought. Automatic, maybe negative, maybe positive, but intentional are the ones that are the purposeful thoughts, what we are choosing to focus on. And I think if we redirect the question to how can I, then it narrows the focus to thinking about all the ways that I can either solve this problem or move forward or make a change, as opposed to can I, which could be 100 different outcomes of yes, no, yeah, if, and it could, it doesn't, I guess, direct you to change.
No, it keeps you stuck.
And so the behavior stays stuck.
Yeah.
And so does my experience.
Which unfortunately reinforces this belief now that I can't.
Right.
Because I'm stuck.
So what do you think when you are redirecting that question of how, because obviously the goal is to change the experience that I'm having based on the behaviors post the thought. What do you think, what's kind of the next step?
I think the next step is once you ask yourself how, we need to answer it.
Right.
Now, again, that could create another stuck point.
Good.
Right? So we say, how can I get through this day?
Well, my answer this morning was, well, I'm going to get a couple more hours of sleep, but I couldn't do that. So yeah, new stuck
Well,
point.
you could have, but that would have caused, right?
Yeah.
I think that's a really great point, because oftentimes that's where we go.
Right.
We say we can do this, but I can't.
Right.
Or at least we tell ourselves.
Right. I don't have a choice.
And I think it's important that we are choosing all the time.
That's a very good point.
Right? We're making decisions all the time. And that's why we're encouraging everybody to be more intentional, more mindful, so that the choices that we are making are the ones we intend to make to get towards our goal.
As opposed to feeling victim to the behaviors of the day or the actions that I'm taking today.
Right.
Like I have to clean or I have to get up. It's, no, I choose to get up because I want to engage in the day. Or I choose to clean because I really value my space in my house.
Yeah.
I think that's a really
great
important
point. And you said value. So one of the things I talk about all the time is the idea of choosing our values, noticing what our values are as opposed to our feelings. Right. So often we are constantly responding to our feelings, and our decisions then are being based on how we're feeling.
Right.
I would encourage you to look at what are your values, what's important to you, then make your decisions based on that.
Right.
So for example, when you were struggling getting up this morning, as was I was questioning, well, do I want to lay in bed, or do I really think it's better for me to take the dog for a walk? I chose to take the dog for a walk. And as I took the dog for a walk, I felt better, right? I started to see some of my neighbors. I got to say hello to a couple of people. The dog obviously loved it, right? So there was reinforcement of choosing that.
I want to emphasize the bigger picture to those questions, though, because to be honest, if I had the choice of which one would I prefer to do, a lot of times I focus to what would I prefer to do in this moment. And so in this moment this morning, I wanted to stay in bed. I did not want to get up and work out or do anything because that sounded exhausting and I was already exhausted. So when you're talking,
was that a feeling?
But that's why I want to emphasize the value question instead, is which one of these behaviors would reinforce the value, which is the bigger picture of what I want for my life, not what do I want instant gratification for right now, hence the feeling. So what will get me out of this or make me feel better? It's a question of which one is going to reinforce what I want in my life, bigger picture, which would have been, the walk. Because I think it's easier said than done when you're focused on the feeling, like you said.
But oftentimes we are looking for that instant gratification.
Right.
So that's really hard, especially if we're used to that instant gratification.
Yeah, that's true.
So I think, again, it goes back to what do we want? What are our values? And being aware of that before we get into those stuck points.
Right.
If we can, one of the things that you can do today is just go through and identify what's important to you. What are your values? Is health important to you? Is eating well important to you? Is sleeping well? Our relationships, a job, some hobbies, reading, learning. What are religion, spirituality? There's a host of things that you can choose from, which can in and of itself become overwhelming, right? But it's important to still identify what is important to you, and then try to live life according to that. And I'll tell you that if you live life according to your values, you will have less conflict, less stress, because we're living more authentically, more genuinely, and it's in relation to how we think about things and believe.
Right.
And when those things line up, we have less conflict, which creates less conflict within ourselves and less stuck points in many ways. So I think it's important to have an idea of what's important to us and use that as our guide, as our rules of thumb to make our decisions. And you're right though, some days you're tired and even though it's important to you to walk or to exercise or to do something for the dog or for somebody else, you don't feel like doing it sometimes. So what happens when you don't?
I guess that's where the question comes in. Is it about the feeling in this moment and feeling better, or is it about getting the bigger picture accomplished? I think one thing you mentioned earlier, and I guess I keep saying too, is this idea of feeling better. I don't know if that's 100% what we're doing when, for instance, I stay in bed longer when I'm tired. Do I actually feel better? Or do I just feel less extra exhausted, as if it was gonna get worse if I got up, kind of thing. I don't know that it's I'm feeling better. I think we need to redefine what is better. Is feeling better and feeling less crappy the same thing? I think it falls on the same line, but I don't know that it's the same thing. And so when we can shift, I really liked how you emphasized the question of how and what do I value, because I think that reinforces the feeling better direction as opposed to the feeling less crappy. Because if you think about it, if I was to focus on how am I going to feel less crappy, you're constantly focused on the crappy.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, exactly.
And you don't automatically get the outcome of feeling better when you do that. However, switch it the other way. If you ask yourself, what do I value? And you really focus on reinforcing what you value, you oftentimes do automatically get that less crappy to kind of coincide with the outcome with that. So I think redirecting in that way, validating that it's really hard right now because I don't really feel great. Mm-hmm. I don't feel motivated. I'm tired, whatever it might be. And this is what I value, and redirect and invest your energy, whatever you have of it, into that. I think that would be the better direction, or the more helpful direction.
I also think after that, so if we choose to get up out of bed and go do whatever we are in alignment with regards to our values, we not only start to feel better, less crappy, but even more importantly, better. We also start to think more positively of ourselves.
Right.
I don't know how many times I've done the opposite and chose to follow my feelings and then not did. Is
that, I don't know.
I don't think that was a correct English there. I don't think I did what I really wanted to do, but I did what I felt like doing.
In that moment.
And afterwards, I look back on my day and I felt bad again.
Right.
I didn't feel as good because I didn't do the things that I knew I either should have done, wanted to do, could have made me feel better for tomorrow, could have taken off some of the stuff on my plate for tomorrow that if I did it today. And I think that's, again, a balance, right? We need to be aware that some days we're going to choose feelings and some days we're going to choose values.
Absolutely.
And that's okay, right? Part of thriving is believing that you're okay no matter what the situation, no matter what the feeling. And part of that mindset has to allow for grace and mercy with ourselves. We need to be able to say, okay, I didn't do what I wanted to do today.
Right.
I can do that tonight. At any point in time, I can get back on track. Right? So often, I think we get into that black and white, all or nothing thinking and feel like, oh, well, we messed up. Yeah. So I'm done for the day.
So I'll start again tomorrow.
Yeah, it's always Monday, it's always tomorrow.
Next week, yeah.
What if, as soon as we're aware of what we are choosing, we
ask ourselves that question. What do I want right now? What do I value?
And how do I get there?
Absolutely.
So we go back to the same kind of steps.
Same protocol, if you will.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's awareness.
So what am I thinking, feeling, and doing?
And then making an intentional decision based on what we're thinking about and telling ourselves, and then making a plan.
Right.
And that plan could involve having others help us out, could involve prioritizing things, could involve shortening our list for what we can do today. Yeah. And then do the rest tomorrow.
So kind of changing the visual to a degree, I think, too. Because when you brought up values earlier, I think that's a really important thing to emphasize in day-to-day life, for the purpose of that's in your control always. No one can change your values, and we can always have the opportunity to change what the visual of those values are. So, for instance, I could value family, but maybe I didn't get dealt the best hand for family. Maybe, my mom isn't really the best listener. Maybe my dad, gives too much advice and tries to control too many things. And I'd always imagined maybe a nice nuclear family where we all had dinner together every night, and maybe that's just not it. Does that mean I have to change the value of family? I would say no. I would say you need to change the visual. Because the more, like you were saying earlier, the more that you're not fulfilling the values that you have or the visual of that value, the more you're going to be at war with yourself internally. And so maybe we change the visual. So to make it even more tangible, you brought up, if I didn't get everything done on my to-do list. Well, maybe we have to redefine the value of success today. Maybe it's getting something done.
And the value of being successful or achieving something or accomplishing something is still present.
Right.
It's just changing that visual, that expectation, what that looks like to still achieve that same value.
Right.
Something that we might be able to bring up next time, because we're running out of time today, but that whole idea of like what you were talking about with family. Say you weren't dealt the best hand with regards to family, or maybe you're not in a relationship, but you want to be.
Right.
If you don't believe that you can have it because you don't have it, does that mean you give up on having that as a value or making that important to you?
I think we do sometimes. So
I think we do
good
too.
Question.
And then does that lead us to not feeling happy, not thriving, not feeling good, not
Because
feeling
we're
good about
ignoring the
ourselves?
value. Yeah.
So maybe next week, what we can do is focus on what you can do to achieve what you want, regardless of the situation.
Yeah, how do you shift the visual of your values so that you can always feel like you're accomplishing something? Yeah.
Nice.
Okay.
All right.
Cool. Well, just a quick reminder, we are going to be posting our our podcast every Wednesday at 7 p.m. and we are going to do at least one live per month, and we'll let you know when that's going to be so we can make sure that it's recurrent. You can find it through our Facebook page, it's going to be on YouTube, and our podcast through Spreaker. Thanks.
Have a good week, everybody.
See you next week.